What's happening, gang? It is Thursday at 10, and it's time for The Truth. I'm your host, Jesse Avinas, co-founder of the Greenhouse Group. We're helping folks get into and out of homes right down here in the heart of San Diego. You might say that's our day job, Carm, as she takes a sip of coffee.
Yes, day job, right.
So that concept, right, being topical or timely, what it is, if it's specific for you, I'd invite you to go check out us. Voyeur in on us over at the website, thegreenhousegroupinc.com. A little bit more about what we do and who we are, what space we intend to occupy over there. But gang, this is Truth Radio. So we got a little egoless chamber inside. We got the keys to the car, you might say, from the folks back in Bristol, Tara, in ESPN. We kick it live 10 a.m. till 11 every Thursday to bring some truth. So no fridge magnets. No BS, no broken promises, just dropping heat. And I got to believe that today, ladies and gents, we're going to be doing just that. First up, if there's like a ding, ding, first up round on truth, we got actually longtime caller, longtime listener, second time in the Truth Radio studios, T Burd from Burd Law Group. What up, Tara?
Good morning.
Wow, she's ready. You saw that? Deadband. Maybe let's see. Carmen Harris, first time actually in the truth seat. And I know you well because you actually hold down court right there at the Greenhouse Group, heart of San Diego.
Yep.
What's it like to be in Truth Radio for the first time, Carmen Harris?
It's so exciting. So exciting. I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me, Jess.
Yeah, you bet. We're going to have some fun today. Now, Tara, I want to kick this party off with you. Now, here's something that came up for me, and then wanted to get you back in, you might call this like our greatest hits of last year. So in 2016, we're bringing in our alphas, to come back for a round two. Inside of your space, you obviously help people get through things, right? And probably better defined by you. So if someone came up to you and said, hey, Tara, who are you and what do you do? What would be your number one answer?
Well, my name is Tara Burd. I'm a solo practitioner here in San Diego, and I'm a civil litigator. That means that when people have problems already and there's a legal remedy for them, we take it to court. My cases range all sorts of issues, but they're typically couched in some sort of contractual issue. That could be a lease, that could be a business agreement, it could be an estate plan, but there's some promise, some document that is binding the parties together.
A human being failed somewhere along the line.
Yep.
Didn't own up to their end of the bargain, whatever, what have you, right? So Tara Burd from Burd Law Group. Now, Tara, this was the context that I wanted to get you in for. True or false? People are not properly planning, and they're wasting their money thinking that they're doing the right thing, but they're actually not doing the best thing.
That's absolutely true.
Yeah. So let's get into this, right? So I mean that you might say you're in the hot seat right now. So we got you in here. Drop some truth on us.
Well, what I've really noticed with a lot of my clients who are coming to me is that people are starting to realize that they need to put things in writing. And I think email makes that a lot easier because we just by nature, we're texting, we're emailing all day. So we have an agreement and I text you something and it might not be all the agreement, but we memorialize it in some fashion. But they're going to attorneys as well, but they're only planning for kind of the best case scenario. So, they're giving me the terms. I owe him $10,000. Okay. Well, now we know how much you owe. When do you have to repay it? Oh, well, I'll repay it next year. Okay. Well, are there any contingencies? Well, what if you don't repay it? What happens? Well, I'm going to repay it. Okay. Well, what if you lose your job? And they're not really planning for these what ifs. And that's what gets people in trouble. And then they go to court and the judge only sees this agreement or this text. And he goes, well, all I see is that you owe 10 grand. But I don't see any of that other stuff that you tell me that you talked about. And so that's where people are really kind of dropping the ball is they're not planning for all the what ifs. They're just planning for the best case scenario. Let's assume he pays. But if that were the case, I wouldn't have a job.
Well, and because the truth is that sometimes it works out, but sometimes it doesn't, right? So
Right.
I got to imagine if you're going to take the time to get all dressed up, like old Braveheart William Wallace quote, like you want to make sure that if you're sitting down with a lawyer and you're paying them for their time, that you account for as many things as humanly possible. But how do you know what you're intentionally, unintentionally leaving on the table?
You don't. I mean, that is the problem, and that is why everyone just needs to be educated. And we need to be open to planning and open to thinking about the worst case. You know, people go into these business relationships and they're very wary when it's someone they don't know. But when they get into real trouble is with someone they do know, a trusted business partner, a family relationship. And that's when they're saying, oh, I don't want to imagine the day that we don't speak. We've been best friends for 20 years. Well, okay, that's great. But I'm telling you, friendships fall apart the minute someone doesn't pay when they're supposed to. I mean, money tears people apart, and no one wants to admit that. But let's just get it on the table. Let's talk about it. And let's prevent that from, ruining our relationship by figuring out what we agree to.
Okay, so we got the 30,000 foot maybe. I can find myself in that truth. So now, do you have like I don't know, maybe like I love stories. Like, do you have a specific kind of case example of how we can kind of find ourselves in how this little dynamic could work for us?
Yes. So most people, their biggest asset is their house.
Okay.
And so a lot of times
that's topical.
They'll take out a loan let's say from a friend, or a business loan, or maybe they'll take out a line of credit or something. But of course, those agreements are going to be more strict. But let's say they borrow from a family member or friend, and they'll say, hey, I got this house, but I can't refi yet. The market's going really well. I'll refi, and then I'll repay you. Well, that sounds great. So let's say they borrow $50,000. Well, they kind of leave it at that. Well, what if you can't refi? Or what if you're promising to sell your home, and you're not really being active about selling it? Or what if it just doesn't sell? Well, now what's your obligation? Because you promised to repay your friend that $50,000, and the $50,000 is gone. So what are those missing terms? You relied on this house, and property values tanked, or you're not being aggressive enough. One way or another, we got to recover this money.
Now, wouldn't that behave kind of like a note would? I mean, obviously, what's germane to us, where there's a specific period of time. There's a specific, let's say, monthly installment obligation. And as long as you make it up to where the balance is satisfied, you're good. Mm-hmm. Unless, you want to go and get rid of the asset and then you pay me off in full.
Sure. So a note would be kind of the next step. So what people will often do is just kind of have this loose agreement where they have to repay based on this contingency of resale. Or refi.
And like not secured against the property kind of thing?
Right.
Aha.
And what you have to do is take that next step, get that security, get the deed of trust, get maybe alternative terms. Hey, you're currently employed. You can make me monthly payments even if you can't refinance this property. But that doesn't mean your debt is extinguished just because this event never happened.
You see that quite a bit?
A lot.
Really?
A lot. Because property is really at the core of everything. Nobody is liquid. We all just have these assets, whether...
Especially here.
Yeah.
Right? You beg, borrow, and steal to get your name on the largest asset possible, and you hope the dirt's worth more tomorrow.
Yes. Or people have money tied up in retirement plans, 401ks, where it costs money to withdraw that money. So they're being penalized. They don't want to do that. And that's their retirement. So they certainly don't want to do that.
And that's also a trend, you might even say, in general with planning, maybe not even part and parcel to your specific domain, but like financial planning. The illiquidity of our country right now is at a standard or a deficit that we've never seen before.
Yes, it is a huge problem with my cases because they require money to get the money that they're owed. I mean, so they're just being double hit. It's like, working for yourself and taking a vacation. Not only are you spending money, you're also not earning money. And that's what it's like for a lot of my clients.
Now, Tara, you've done something, and I love you for doing this because, it's tough to sometimes take everything that it's like this big river that's just like gushing in front of you, and then take a little tiny cup and like scoop it out and be like, here's some really valuable part of my brain. But you did that actually in advance of coming on the show today, and I appreciate that. You actually created a free report that you titled The 5 Questions You Gotta Know Before You're 40. And I love that title, by the way. It's brilliant. Thank you. And this is where a lot of the stuff ends up kind of coming out in the soup, right? So 40 is an arbitrary number.
Kind of, but I did some research, and in San Diego, by the time you're 40, you probably have maybe kids. You've probably married or been married. You probably own a home. I mean, 50% by the time they're 40 own a home. I mean, it's more than 50, but you get the drift. Yeah. So these are things that are really salient to being 40 as opposed to even 30. And then certainly by the time you're 50, you got to have these questions answered.
Now, gang, if you want the truth, you might say, here, I'll do this.
I want the truth!
Right? You love that.
Love
card.
that.
Come on, that was perfect, right?
I do love it.
You can actually go to Tara's site. She's actually got this this free report ready for you to download. It's Burd Law Group, right? .com, and then it's /plan for everything, and 4 is FOR. Is that correct?
Correct. And T-Burd, T-B-U-R-D.
Yeah, Burd. That's right. Yeah, that's good. I'm used to seeing it so much now. It's second nature for me. Yeah, Burd, T-B-U-R-D. lawgroup.com /plan for everything. You can download that free report. The 5 questions you have to ask yourself before you're 40. That's some truth, wouldn't you say?
A lot of truth. And they're all based on real cases, real people that I've met with. So these are real problems, not things I just imagined or read about.
Although that might be just as entertaining.
Absolutely. That's part 2.
Speaking of part 2 and entertaining, Burd, you're staying right there in the hot seat, girl, because when we come back, what happens when you, wait for it, lose your mind, right? But you're still alive?